AJ, I'm gonna pick your brain a little bit about some games. So,
All right.
the '07 game against Michigan, you remember that?
That was what, at Michigan?
Yes. So I think we lost 12-9.
Okay.
Um, didn't have a touchdown. Obviously, had 3 field goals, but that was like a that was a big loss. Because we were, I think, when I say we, obviously, I wasn't on the team. I was just, as like Penn State
Yeah, I got
fan
you.
and everything. Do you remember that game at all? Ryan
Uh,
Mallett actually was the quarterback.
so did him and Robinson rotate that game? Cause I'm trying to remember.
No, Mike was gone. That was Morelli. That was his second year.
No, I'm
Um,
talking about Robinson as far as for Michigan, number 16.
so
Oh,
that was
shoelace.
Chad Henne and Ryan Mallett. I think Denard was there. No, Denard was later. I think he was like 20 because he was on the 2014 NCAA football cover. So Denard Robinson was later. Um,
Dude, I could have sworn I played against them. Well, I got you.
you, I don't know.
Shoelace. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
what he's
didn't tie
called.
his shoes. And then they had that other quarterback too. That number 5, I think his name was. I can't remember his name. He was like a big name for a while though, because I don't think he's really supposed to start, but he ended up playing anyway
Hmm.
for Michigan. But yeah, that was Penn State went in there. It was a 12-9 game, tough loss. Didn't score a touchdown. And then, because that was right after they lost to App State, you know.
Hmm.
And then they got blown out by Oregon. I think they were like 1-3 at that time, or 1-2 when Penn State went in there. And Penn State was undefeated, I think, at that time.
Hmm.
But I don't think you would have. You were probably on special teams at that time. Uh, but I always wondered for that game in particular how that went down. I mean, because that was such a tough loss. We were the better. Penn State was the better team.
Hmm.
So I don't know if you have any insight on that game in particular or not.
I'm trying to think. Cause like I know the first sophomore year I was kind of like nickel, and I was still well in practice. They had it in the packages for like the offensive stuff, but I don't know how much we carried it out just because of how the games were going. But
It
for some
was
reason,
okay. Yeah, it was. I'll turn off the sound here, but it was. Yeah, it was this game here. They went. You remember? It was. Yeah, Penn State was 10. Michigan was unranked, but we were on the road. I don't know if you
mhm.
remember that at all, but um, I remember they had a chance to score a touchdown. Morelli overthrew his guy, but
Yeah.
now as a fan, AJ
Mhm.
Morelli was he was tough to watch. I'm not expecting you to say anything bad about him.
Mhm.
What was that like having him as the quarterback?
He he was a leader, you know what I mean. And like I
Yeah.
said,
Okay.
he could throw a rocket, you know. But I mean, miscues happen, you know what I mean. Whether somebody misses a block and he just tries to get it off, or just trusting his arm that much because he had the arm for basically any throw. So
Yeah.
sometimes those throws just got him in trouble sometimes.
Yeah. He was the number one quarterback in his class too.
Hmm.
He was
I
from
said
the
he had
Pittsburgh
game.
area. Yeah, it was between him and Chad Henne actually that were supposed to come to Penn State. Uh,
Oh, okay.
but I think Morelli he like outperformed him in an All Star game, Chad Henne. So they took Morelli.
Mm.
But all right, 08 against Ohio State. Do you remember that? At Ohio State,
Yeah.
that
Yep.
was a big game.
Yeah, I remember
Um,
that game.
All right, so I think Lydell Sargent had the game-sealing interception.
Yeah.
The guy that you battled for years for the starting spot. You remember, like, do you have any insight on that game in particular that you remember? That was a big win.
So that year, I'm trying to think who they. Yeah, because that was. I think that was the
They
year they
had
had that big pass breakup against Ted. Justin did, right? I think he
yes,
went like for like a deep post and like he broke it up. Now that game was fun. You know what I mean? That's actually a game I played offense in.
yep.
But yeah, that game was fun. It was electric. Obviously being recruited by Ohio State, I knew a lot of
Hmm.
the guys on Ohio State and the coaches and stuff. So it was maybe a little more emotional game for me. But yeah, it was definitely a big game. It was fun.
Well, that play right there, that's when Mark Rubin knocked that ball out, and then Navarro Bowman, another guy you played with, got the
Yeah.
recovery. That was a huge play. I mean, that was edge of your seat game the whole game.
Hmm.
But Terrell Pryor was the quarterback of that team because he was
Oh,
supposed to
that's
come to
a
Penn State.
yeah. I remember. I know exactly what you're talking about now because I remember. I can't remember who the person was, but while I was getting recruited, that's when I just recently changed my number to 1. And it was like, oh, Terrell Pryor about to come take that. I was like, nah, he ain't. He can find something else. So it was funny. But yeah, yeah, I remember that game.
Yeah, well, Daryl Clark got when I say knocked out, not that he was like physically knocked out, but he was taken out of the game because he got hit in the
Hmm.
head. And I just remember what was ironic about that game, if that's the word, was Terrell Pryor was recruited to Penn State, the Jeanette, Pennsylvania guy. Um, said he didn't want to come to Penn State because it was too there was he pretty much said it was like farm country. He didn't want to come there.
Oh yeah, there you go right there.
And then
Yeah.
yeah. And then at the end of the game, he's picked off by Lydell Sargent. It was just so satisfying as a fan because he didn't come to Penn State. And he was
Hmm.
one of the highest recruited players probably of all time.
It was crazy.
Uh but yeah, and you say he almost took your number. Okay. But yeah, he was number 2 at Ohio State because I think Malcolm Jenkins, right? He was number 1, I think. Malcolm Jenkins?
Jenkins was number 2, but I think he was gone
Number
by
2?
then. Yeah, that was
Okay.
actually my host when I went to uh, look at him. When I went to visit,
Was
Malcolm Jenkins was my host.
was he really?
Hmm.
Okay. He had a long career in the NFL too.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And he was a highly drafted guy as well, I think. I think it was '08 or I think it was 2009 when he got drafted.
Hmm.
And Aaron Maben, he went I think
Hmm.
number 9 that year.
Yeah.
Um, and then Audric, he went later on, but yeah, that was a huge win. And then the game. So the 2 games that I really wanted to dive into was the next one.
Hmm.
I think it was the next week. Iowa
Oh.
uh, lost on the road. Yeah, yeah. So man, that sucked. I cried after that game like a baby.
Yeah.
Um, so was Daryl Clark 100%? You remember?
I feel like everybody was pretty good going to the game. You know, you have your bumps and bruises. I think what was that, like a 6 or 7 game maybe of the season. So I mean, everybody had their little bumps and bruises they was dealing with. But I think the mind state was good. And then like they warned us about the pink locker rooms. I was just like, that ain't gonna phase me. You know what I mean? But it was just I don't know. It was like a slow, lethargic game. I felt like it was just, and then they had that running back, Sean Green. Well, he was a bruiser too. Like, he put his shoulder down. I'm like, goodness gracious. It's 4 quarters of this. So, I mean, it was one of them games that came down, obviously, to the wire, the field goal, which was, I think that was like our national championship year. We should have won it.
Yeah, see, that's the thing, man. '08 particularly, and Justin King, I actually forgot this. He left right before the '08 season. Went to the
Mm-hmm.
NFL. So you had quite a bit of time
Mm-hmm.
playing in all facets. That game, man, the conspiracy was that Daryl Clark was knocked out of the Ohio State game.
Mm-hmm.
So he shouldn't have played in the Iowa game because he still wasn't fully recovered from the concussion that he had or whatever it was that Pat Devlin should have played.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but it sounds like that wasn't the case.
I mean, I feel like I know when I had a concussion, I had to go through these protocols. You had to go back to the original doctor you went to see how you tested last time and see where you was at. And so, I mean, I'm sure they took the steps to do that. And then him
Hmm.
being the competitor
Yeah.
that he is, he's not going to sit out the game, you know?
No.
So it was like, yeah, you can play, or maybe you should wait another week. He's going to play. You know what I'm saying? If he's clear, he's playing.
Yeah, man, and what was so devastating about that was that team was so stacked
Hmm.
on both sides of the ball. I mean, you had like guys like Mark Rubin, Scarrato, who were seniors. You were in there. Lydell was in there. Uh, Tony Davis, and then they had freaking. It wasn't Dan Connor, but it was like Sean Lee and Navarro Bowman and
Hmm.
Tyrell Sells on the defense, and Maben and Audric and Maurice Evans. And then they had all those offensive weapons. So I think that, and then I was going to ask you about the USC game too, but I think if they would have won, if Penn State would have beat Iowa, they would have gone to the national title for sure.
Yeah.
And it was Florida and Oklahoma at that time. It was like Tim Tebow and the quarterback from Oklahoma, the Heisman winner, Sam Bradford.
Hmm.
Do you think that team '08 could have beaten like Florida or Oklahoma
I think
in
with
the
the right
national
game
title?
plan,
Okay.
when we put the pieces to the puzzle, I mean, we pretty much handle our business and hold our own, even when it comes to bowl games. So my first freshman year, it was nice and sunny, so there was no excuses. We beat a Tennessee team, and
Uh-huh.
then sophomore year, well, we all know how that went. Well, was that junior year? No, we went to the Rose Bowl, 2009. So
Yep.
I think we went to Texas A&M, San Antonio,
Yep.
played them. We won that game. It was in the inside, so like I said, no weather excuses. I mean, the only one that was weather was LSU, but we both have to play in it. So at that point, I think we hold our own against any team in the nation, honestly.
Yeah, you were 3-1 in bowl games when you were there.
Hmm.
Yep. Tennessee, Arian Foster was on that team.
Yeah,
A&M, you guys won that, and then the Rose Bowl, and then I think it was Capital One. What was it? Capital One.
Capital One, LSU. Yeah,
Yeah. The Mud Bowl.
yeah.
Um, but but yeah, I ask you that because I think if Penn State would have ended up playing Oklahoma or Florida, definitely could have won against one of those two teams. But then you played USC, who I think, even though they weren't in the national title, and unfortunately Penn State had to play them, I think they were like the most high-powered team in the nation that year. They just lost to Oregon State
Yeah.
earlier in the year, and then I think it was like a week later, you
Hmm.
guys beat the crap out of them at home. Um, what was it about that game? Because I've watched that game a million times. Um, what was it about that game, man, that made Penn State lose? And it really did. I came down to the passing game because Sanchez was just throwing the ball left and right. Did you guys adjust in that game?
Yeah, I mean, we made adjustments. It was just they made adjustments too. I think that college era of Mark Sanchez was like the top of his career, like where he was just in his prime. Like felt like he could do no wrong kind of thing. You know what I mean? Like even if he threw a duck or something or just threw it up, somebody was catching it. Like, man, what in the world? So everything that could go right for them, I think, went right that game. Everything. And then just like this stature, like I don't get intimidated by how people look, but just looking at him, you like, all right, it's gonna be a fight. You know what I mean? Like those dudes, they was just built different, like all around, from the linemen to the DBs.
Well, I remember Damian Williams, the
Hmm.
receiver for them.
Yeah.
Man, I got so mad that after that first touchdown he had, he was waving at the crowd.
Hmm.
I got so mad after that because I was like, all right, I hope this isn't how. Because, man, he threw it right over Scarrado's hand. That first touchdown they had, Scarrado, like, dove out, just
Hmm.
missed the ball. And he was good. He was a good safety.
Yeah.
But they were just fast. I mean, they had
Yeah.
Damian Williams, Patrick Turner, um, good
Stephon
squad.
Johnson, Joe McKnight, uh,
Yeah.
they had, oh man, Taylor Mays. Like it was just animals out there.
Taylor Mays, that was the guy that he should have declared after that year, but he didn't. He came back. Probably could
Hmm.
have been like a top 10 pick, but he knocked Norwood out of that game.
Yeah, that he probably would have been injected in today's game, but yep.
Well, he knocked his own player out too.
Yeah, like I
Um,
said, he had to be all of 230 back then,
yeah,
running, and he
yep,
was flying.
and he
I
was
think he run like a
massive.
4.3 or 4.4. Like that's crazy.
Yep, yep. Um, and I don't know what you think. We talked about the lifting program at Penn State.
Hmm.
Um, do you think there was because I don't think USC did what you guys did, like a lot of the machine lifting and stuff like that. You think that made a difference between the two conferences in particular? Like you're playing a Pac-10 team at the time.
Hmm.
You think that made a difference in terms of like the lifting programs, the preparation, what you guys ran into there?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean,
All right, yeah,
especially
that's what I thought.
knowing
But
about like my body I do now, it definitely you training for strength. All right, cool. You know what I mean? You could be strong and durable, but they're training to be explosive. You know what I mean? So they're doing those Olympic style lifts, those power
hmm
cleans, those squats, squat jumps, box jumps, stuff that we didn't do. So at that point, they're going to have a level up over time just because of the stuff that they're doing. Their body's just going to be clicking much faster, like those fast twitch muscles. You know what I mean? So it definitely
yeah.
played a role.
Well, I think the main concept behind the lifting program at Penn State was endurance. Because we've talked about this before on my podcast. Like we knew what the lifting program was at Penn State, and then when you played a team like USC, who was the Pac-10 was always fast.
Hmm.
Uh, I'm sure they were doing like free weights and stuff, like you said. So I felt like that on the field, you could see the difference, you know,
Hmm.
between that. I mean, as good as that '08 team was
Yeah.
for Penn
Yeah, I could
State.
just see it like in the build of their bodies. You know what I mean? So, and unless they just had like a impeccable meal plan, like I don't know. But as far as that goes, like it was like across the board, the team was just all in shape. I tell you that. I was like, goodness gracious.
Yeah, and you mentioned about Mark Sanchez, how you say he was big, like he's built, huh?
Hmm.
Because he was 6'2", 230 at that time, 232.
Hmm.
I mean, I never even thought about, kind of what he would look like in person. But yeah, I think that year USC, you mentioned the names. They had like three backs that I'm pretty sure they had three backs that were all over like 1,000 yards.
Yeah,
I
and
mean,
like I said, the open field was their playground, man. Like you give them a hole and they just like think, think, think. I think Stephon Johnson. I think he ended up going to the Bills. He was more like their grit guy at the moment. He would get those tough yards. He could break a sweep, but they used Joe McKnight to go ahead and give us a spark, like go a quick screen to bubble screen, like, and then his cuts were just it was Reggie Bush esque. I'll tell you that much. Like wasn't
Hmm.
Reggie Bush, but it was like, man, he's pretty darn close to him. You know what I mean? So
Yeah. 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 That was their only loss was again Oregon State. They lost in I think I don't know if it was overtime or not, but they lost. It was like a tip pass or something like that. But um, I just always wondered what happened because that team was so Penn State that year was so good.
hmm
And then even into '09, man, I don't mean to keep talking about the losses here, but
oh, it was good.
Iowa at home in '09, rainy. Again, you guys lost a close one. And you were the starter. You were a starter at that point.
hmm
So do you remember that game?
I kind of like blur those losses out, man.
Yeah, I don't blame you. I don't
I,
blame you.
I guess like as a DB, like I said, next play you just gotta forget about it, move on to the next one. But
Yeah.
Iowa, I just remember those because the first time it happened, you know what I mean, it was a big punch to the gut. Then the second time, it was like, man, here we go again. Like we got to get our minds right, get ready for next week because I feel like there was no reason for us to lose. Not to take away nothing from Iowa, they came ready to play. So, but just knowing the capabilities that we had and what we had in our team shouldn't happen.
Yeah, because a lot of guys came back. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I think Suke, he was the next safety.
Mm-hmm.
But you guys were number 5, came in and won. But yeah, again, a stacked team, and then you guys end up at the end of the year playing LSU and you win. Great
Yeah.
way to go out for all you guys.
Yeah.
Um, that was like Bowman,
Mm-hmm.
Jerome Hayes, I think was still on the team at that time. You,
Mm-hmm.
um, Daryl Clark, Derek Moy, all those guys, Evan Royster. So to go out with a win like that, especially Daryl Clark, I remember he was pretty emotional after that. Um, that was a good LSU team. That was a coming off of like a national title like 2 years before that,
Right.
and they were pretty good. I think Patrick Peterson was on that team.
Mm-hmm.
So
Trending
for you
Holiday was on
guys,
that team. Justin Jefferson's brother was a quarterback.
yep,
Um, Tolliver, the receiver. Uh, yeah, they had some people on there.
it was their coach Les Miles. He was the coach
Mm-hmm.
at the time too, but in your time at Penn State, AJ, you guys, like you mentioned, you beat Arian Foster in Tennessee, you beat A&M, Justin Jefferson's brother in LSU. You guys had a lot of big wins, and you beat some good players. I mean, historically, Penn State's beaten some good teams. They beat like Tim Couch in '99 in the one bowl game they played against Kentucky. Beat Ricky Williams when he played at Texas. I think Wally Richardson was the quarterback at that time. But so you don't keep up with the team right now, AJ?
I don't follow too much just with my schedule, kind of. And
Yeah,
then, like I said, being that where I'm at, it's just Gamecocks here, Clemson here. You know what I mean? So you get all the down south teams. So
yeah,
that pretty much consumes all the channels, really.
yeah. Well, I'd definitely like to have you on um, during the season just to get your perspective. I guess if you need any updates, just ask me because
Mhm.
we we talk about it all the time.
Yeah.
But yeah, we got a good team coming back, man. We're in
Mhm.
prime position right now to win it all, I think. So
Oh,
um, you talk about most recent history, like '08 was a shot to win it all. 2017 with Saquon and them was a shot, and then now again. So, is there anything else you want to cover, AJ?
No, that was. I mean, I'm good if you're good, but I'm just trying to think. I don't even know who they have like coming back. Like I said, I think the Peacock app has a Big Ten network, but it's like hit or miss. Sometimes you get like an Indiana game, and you're like, I'm not
Yeah,
watching that.
yeah.
So I'm gonna try to keep up with it. But, I mean, now I'm just kicking strong with this prep, man. Trying to stay focused.
Yeah. So you have a show. So when is your first show? You're doing you haven't done a show yet, right?
Right, I haven't done one, so I think I'm gonna do it either the middle or end of May. I just gotta double check the dates and check with my coach just to see where we're at. But we're making good progress. He's liking what he's seeing.
Good. Well, speaking of the Arnold Classic, man, that could be you soon.
Yeah.
Standing on that stage. I could definitely see you doing that. And again, I'm happy you're doing that, man. Because you got a good build. You got a good future with that. Have you heard? I think I asked you this. Dave Palumbo. Have you heard of him?
I heard the name. I can't even put a face to it.
So yeah, he's RX Muscle. They're actually there right now covering the whole thing.
Okay.
But I was gonna put you guys in touch. He's really good with communication, so
Mhm.
I was gonna put you guys in touch. If you ever need anything or have any questions, he'll answer them. And he coaches and everything too. So I know you have a coach,
Yeah.
but he would be a good guy to work with too. Chris Aceto, you know him? You know that name?
Like as much as I like dig into like the bodybuilding stuff, I vary a lot. I mean, as much I don't know.
Yeah. Well, he's kind of like he's well known in the bodybuilding community, but he's
Mhm.
not like a huge name. But he was Jay Cutler's coach.
Oh, okay.
He has a lot of Olympia titles under his belt. He's like Hani Rambod, kind of.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah, like they call him the technician, Chris the technician Aceto. But he was Jay Cutler's guy, but he's another very knowledgeable person. Him and Dave are like best friends. So
Oh, nice.
there's some guys that I want to get you in contact with because they're just good contacts to have in the industry and good guys that you could. Dave does email. All right. I'll email Dave right now. And 5 minutes later, he answers me.
That's what's up.
Because he's just that good with communication. Even though he's like got a million things going on, he's like constantly answering his email. So I'm gonna put you guys in touch. But
Okay. Yeah, do that. I appreciate that.
yeah, we'll talk more about that. But AJ, again, thanks for coming on, man. There's nothing
Absolutely.
else you want to talk about. It's always good to have guys like you on here, man. Former players. You guys, again, you mean a lot to the fans. What you guys did and what you guys are doing.